Okay, let's unpack this incredible story. We're diving into the life of a figure most of us only think about maybe once a year.
Right, and we're going way beyond the myths. No snakes, no leprechauns.
We want to uncover the real story of Patrick.
Exactly. The mission here is to see how a boy born with a bit of a silver spoon in the Roman Empire gets kidnapped.
And then somehow that experience prepares him to go back and change an entire nation.
It's not a story about a conqueror.
Hmm.
It's about a captive who learned the culture from the inside out.
So let's set the scene. We're in Roman Britain, late 4th century. Patrick, or Patricius as he was probably called,
Is born into a pretty well-off family.
a very stable family.
Oh, yeah. His father had this dual role that tells you everything. He was a local Roman official, so, he had money and power,
And he was also a church deacon.
which means they were also deeply connected to the Christian faith.
Mm-hmm.
This was supposed to be a safe, comfortable life.
But all of that just ends in one day when he's 16.
Precisely. We know from his own writing that Irish raiders, basically pirates, attacked his village right on the coast.
And this wasn't just for plunder.
No, not at all. This was a raid for human capital, for people. He was captured, tied up, and shipped across the sea to Ireland to be sold as a slave.
That is just an unimaginable shift from son of an official to human cargo.
And his reality for the next 6 years was brutal. He was sold to a local chieftain and put to work as a shepherd,
Alone in the hills.
completely isolated, for 6 years. But that time, as horrible as it was, it transformed him.
And not just emotionally, it was strategic, wasn't it?
It was a forced total immersion program. He had to learn the Irish language, not the formal kind, but the everyday language of shepherds, just to do his job.
He's absorbing the culture, the customs.
The geography, who the powerful tribes were. And in that loneliness, his faith became incredibly intense. He said he prayed hundreds of times a day. This suffering wasn't just a detour, it was his entire preparation.
So after 6 years of this, he gets this incredible resilience. He's fluent in the language, and then he just leaves.
He had a dream, a vision that told him a ship was ready for him. So he ran,
He just fled his master.
fled his master, and walked over 200 miles. I mean, think about that. Just walking through hostile territory to get to the coast, hoping not to get caught.
And somehow he finds a ship.
He does, a ship full of traders. The captain was suspicious at first, but Patrick, through, I guess, sheer desperation, convinces the guy to take him home to Britain.
He finally gets back. His family must have been just beside themselves with joy.
Oh, of course. But the story doesn't end there. He's safe, but he's immediately facing this huge internal conflict.
His parents are begging him to stay.
They're saying, you're home, you're safe, never leave again. And who could blame them? But Patrick kept having these powerful visions,
Calling him back.
calling him back to Ireland, to the very people who had enslaved him.
That's so hard to wrap your head around. Why would you ever go back to the place of your trauma?
He saw it as a divine mission. The key vision he talks about is a man named Victoricus giving him a letter. And the letter was titled, The Voice of the Irish.
And he heard them asking him to come back.
He did. He heard them pleading for his help. So for him, it wasn't a choice anymore. It was a direct command.
But he didn't just rush back in, did he? He knew he wasn't ready.
Exactly. He understood that being a shepherd didn't exactly qualify him to be a missionary. He needed legitimacy. So he spent the next 15 years studying in Gaul, which is modern-day France.
15 years.
A decade and a half of intense study. To become a priest and eventually a bishop. He was making up for all the education he missed as a slave.
But he faced some serious pushback for this, right?
He did, a lot of it.
Yeah.
When he finally asked to be sent to Ireland, some powerful church leaders basically said no.
Why?
They felt he wasn't fit for the job. He didn't have the classical Roman education that other bishops had. They saw him as unlearned, maybe a little too rough around the edges.
So they wanted a polished academic, but what they had was this battle-tested survivor.
Exactly. But his determination, the power of his calling, it won out in the end. He was finally made a bishop and sent back.
So he arrives in Ireland around the year 432, and he is uniquely qualified for this.
Absolutely. He's not some outsider who only speaks Latin. He knows the language, he knows the culture, and crucially, he understands the politics.
And what was that political situation like?
It was a complete patchwork. Not one nation, but dozens of small competing kingdoms ruled by local kings or chiefs, and the real power behind them. The Druids.
The priests who advised the kings.
They held enormous influence. So you can't just show up and start preaching.
So what was his strategy? How do you even begin?
His strategy was brilliant because it was so practical.
Yeah.
Get the kings on your side. He knew he needed their permission and their protection to even operate.
How did he do that? Did he just walk in and start quoting scripture?
Not at all. He played by their rules. He would visit the king's courts and bring them gifts, valuable gifts. It was a sign of respect.
Customary exchange.
Exactly. And if the king accepted him, the whole tribe was much more likely to at least listen to what he had to say.
And this, of course, puts him on a collision course with the Druids.
Immediately. They saw him as a direct threat to their power. And that tension led to one of the most famous stories about him.
This is the story about the fire on the Hill of Slain, right?
Yes. So there's a huge pagan festival, and the law was simple. No one could light a fire before the High King lit his sacred bonfire at Tara. The punishment was death.
And what does Patrick do?
He goes to the Hill of Slain, which is in plain sight of Tara, and lights this enormous Easter fire.
That is an incredibly bold move. It's a direct challenge.
It's forcing a confrontation in the most public way possible.
Yeah.
It was a test of power. And the fact that he wasn't killed right there shows that the kings at least saw something in him. Maybe they respected his courage.
So beyond these big symbolic acts, how did he actually teach? How do you explain these complex Christian ideas to, say, tribal farmers?
By making it simple, he bridged the gap. This is where the legend of the shamrock is so important.
The Trinity.
Right. A super complex idea. 3 persons in one God. So he supposedly picks up a 3-leaf clover, a plant everyone knew.
And says, look, 3 leaves, 1 stem.
Exactly. It's not just a cute visual aid, it's a genius move. He's taking an abstract concept and grounding it in an object from their world, from nature, which they already revered.
And he did the same thing with language, too. He didn't preach in Latin.
No, he spoke in Irish. This was huge. The church usually insisted on Latin. By speaking their language, he went straight to the common people, the farmers, the laborers, the women. He bypassed the elite.
He was also really smart about incorporating their traditions, not just banning them.
The bonfires are the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
The Irish already celebrated their gods with these huge fires, so instead of telling them to stop, Patrick just repurposed them.
So now the bonfires are for celebrating Easter.
Right. It made the new faith feel familiar, not like a total rejection of everything they'd ever known.
Let's talk about the danger he was in, because this was not a safe mission.
Not even close. He wrote that he was kidnapped and put in chains at least 12 times.
12.
Think about that. He was constantly being seized by hostile chiefs, and he often had to pay huge sums of money, basically ransoms, just for safe passage through their lands.
And yet he kept going.
He did. He lived in constant fear of being killed or sold back into slavery, but he refused to leave Ireland. That resilience must have been incredibly inspiring to his followers.
So as he's building these communities, he also starts building actual structures.
Yes, he understood the mission needed roots, so he started founding small churches and, really importantly, monasteries.
And these weren't just places for prayer.
No, they became the most important centers of learning and literacy in the country. This is the origin of Ireland being called the land of saints and scholars.
Because he was teaching people to read and write.
Exactly. His followers started meticulously copying books, religious texts, but also ancient Irish history and myths. He wasn't just bringing a new religion, he was bringing the tools to preserve their own culture. And he trained local Irishmen to be priests so the church could grow from within.
Something else that was really unusual for the time was how inclusive he was, especially towards women.
Very unusual. He actively encouraged women to take on important roles. Many women from noble families chose to become nuns.
And they started their own convents and schools.
They did, specifically for young girls. And this took immense courage. Their families often wanted them to marry for political reasons, and they faced a lot of pressure, even harsh treatment, for their choice.
But they were crucial to the mission's success.
Absolutely. Their work allowed the faith to move beyond the public world of kings and warriors and into the private life of the family.
And even with all this building, Patrick himself never really settled down.
No, he was always on the move. For decades, he traveled to the most remote corners of Ireland, through forests and over mountains.
Baptizing people in rivers, holding meetings in open fields.
He was building a huge, decentralized network of believers all over the island, instead of just sitting in one city like a typical Roman bishop would.
And toward the end of his life, he left us this incredible document, his own words.
His Confessio.
Yeah.
It's such a rare, authentic piece of history because he wrote it as a defense.
A defense against who?
Against his old critics back in Britain who were still questioning his motives and his qualifications.
And what does it tell us about him?
It shows his humility. He basically says, look, I'm not a great scholar. I'm a simple, unlearned sinner. He stresses that he never took any money for baptisms or ordinations, that he lived in poverty and was driven only by a sense of duty, not for fame. It's his integrity on the page.
So Patrick dies, traditionally on March 17th, and by then he has completely transformed Ireland. He turned a pagan tribal land into a major center of Christianity. He really is a symbol of Irish identity.
And his ultimate legacy was the system he built. Those monasteries he founded thrived for centuries, becoming these beacons of learning that preserved so much knowledge while the rest of Europe was in the Dark Ages.
And they sent their own missionaries out.
All across Europe, spreading the learning that Patrick had first brought to them.
So if you take one thing away from all this, think about how one person who started as a captive managed to change an entire island, not with an army, but by learning the language, respecting the culture, and connecting with people on their own terms. Good luck with your studies.